So, I'm back, and it's time for Sim history. And not just any history, World War II history. Now, everyone knows of the biggest battles, like D-Day and such, but did you know there was a mission planned that was just as daring? Just as big? Well, if you ever saw the movie A Bridge Too Far or the show Band of Brothers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Operation Market Garden. If you haven't watched those two shows, stop right now and watch them, they're masterpieces. Operation Market Garden was an operation that was supposed to end the war, the biggest airborne operation since the beginning of it, the biggest in history so far. The plan was that on September 17th, 1944, 3 airborne divisions would drop over 7 key bridges in the Netherlands, all the way up to Arnhem, and once they had all the bridges secured, the armour and infantry could move in. Or at least, that was Montgomery's plan. But it did not turn out that way. So, let's explore the tale of Operation Market Garden. Now, let's not lie, this was an insanely ambitious plan. There was only one motorway that connected the Netherlands to Belgium. It was 63 miles, 101 kilometers, the superior measurement. Anyway, they were supposed to make 101 kilometers in 2 days. Yeah, extremely ambitious. But with the victories the Allies had been experiencing, they didn't care. They were itching to use paratroopers. So, on September 10th, Operation Market Garden was approved and put into action. Now, let's just make one thing clear. These are paratroopers, who are meant to capture this position. You know, light infantry, mostly used for quick attacks and surprise. Yeah, that'll be important later. To go with this, the armour was going to be going along the aforementioned single motorway that was easily ambushed. So, yeah. September 17th arrives, and 1,500 aircrafts and 400 gliders drop troops 96 kilometers from the nearest Allied units. Outside of Arnhem, Auchart's unit had to fight through Germans to capture the bridges and railroads. They were dropped miles away from Arnhem, despite the fact they could have been dropped much closer, but the RAF was too afraid to lose some planes. This seriously delayed them, and to add insult to injury, their radios didn't work great. Thankfully, the 2nd Battalion managed to make it to Arnhem Bridge and hold up just north of it, but their reinforcements were held back by a German counterattack. The US 82nd Airborne Division fared much better than the Brits, and 7,500 of them captured the southernmost objective and bunkered down preparing for another German counterattack. In Eindhoven, the 101st Airborne captured 3 of their main targets, but the Germans blew the 2 bridges needed to cross the river, so they needed to reconstruct the bridges. This slowed down the armour and infantry from arriving, and get this, a glider went down and was found by the Germans with the entire plan of Operation Market Garden. Yeah, this really isn't going well. The next morning, the 2nd Airborne wave was prevented because of fog, and the drops so desperately needed already were delayed. That 2nd Battalion is still holding out in Arnhem despite being besieged by German armoured divisions and running low on supplies, while the other 3 divisions slowly make their way towards the bridges. In Nijmegen, the 82nd are faring much better, getting reinforcements as well as failing to take the bridge. Did I say better? Yeah, nothing's going right with this plan, as those plans that were found convinced the Germans Nijmegen was the most important battle, since it was the connecting bridge, so they held on. In Eindhoven, the main army began to reconstruct a makeshift bridge as the 101st fight off the German counterattack. The Allies are meant to take 101 kilometers in 2 days, but on the first day, they only made it 11. Even worse, the other battalions in Arnhem were beaten so severely they were pushed back from their original positions, and all the airdrops were now missing them completely and landing in German-controlled areas. But it wasn't all bad news. The main force manages to make it to Nijmegen and attempts to push through, but their efforts are halted by the Germans. The 4th day arrives, and with it a fresh German counterattack. The other battalions at Arnhem give up on the 2nd, as they are cornered in Oosterbeek, and those reinforcements are nowhere to be found. But the Allied army in Nijmegen finally break through, and with some interesting tactics involving a near-suicidal canoe charge. Yes, you heard me correctly. Canoe charge. But they don't immediately move on and instead secure Nijmegen. Day 5 arrives. On this day, the resilient 2nd Battalion gets completely annihilated, with the last transmission of "Out of ammunition, long live the king." They had held Arnhem for 5 days against panzers, artillery, and hordes of Wehrmacht. The remaining 3,500, holding on to the river near Oosterbeek, seemed to be meeting the same fate, but 750 Poles drop on the other side of the river, and some of the army finally arrives to maybe help the remaining paratroopers. But some have to hang back as a massive German counterattack attempt to take back the bridges of Weghal between Eindhoven and Nijmegen. By the 8th and 9th day, the 1st Airborne Division and their Polish reinforcements escape under the cover of night, leaving Arnhem securely in German hands. 1,741 of the 10,000 men from the 1st Battalion made it back. How did this go so horribly wrong? Well, despite the entire plan basically being a fever dream they came up with, the fact that the panzer divisions had happened to be there just made it basically impossible for the ill-equipped paratroopers to hold out. There were also the delays in armoured support and the problems with the radios, and whether all in all, the operation was destined to fail. That was clear from the start, but no one wanted to rock the boat. No one was willing to admit they had gone a bridge too far. Tune in next week, hopefully, if I get it done by then, where I go into depth about that 2nd Battalion who staved off the recapture of Arnhem. Because that story is really good, and it's also where you spend most of your time in the movie, A Bridge Too Far, which is one of my favourite movies ever. So yeah, come back next week.